Hi everyone, this is Jeremic85, and today I'm going to replace the water pump, two of the coolant sensors, one for the computer and one for the gauge, and I'm going to replace all the fluid in the coolant system, and I'm going to replace the thermostat. So to be able to do that, I'm going to take out this alternator, AC compressor, the coolant hose up here, the fan shroud I'm planning to take out too. And I'm going to start with taking out the fluid. I'm going to use a canister to catch it and this hose. You can find the drain plug down here in the corner, down on the radiator on the driver's side. So I'm going to go down there and attach this hose to it to fill the fluid into the canister. So what you see here is the actual drain plug. You have to turn it so that the fluid comes out, and on the bottom you can attach a hose like this to it. So now I'm going to turn it counterclockwise and then the fluid comes out. I'm opening up this cap so that the air can go in. That way the fluid comes out faster. First thing I'm going to take out is the air intake. I have this aftermarket K&N air intake system. If you have the original air intake, there's just a box sitting on here with a hose to this left side here. You take off the hose first, and then there's a little screw down here that you have to take off to be able to take off the actual air cleaner unit. I have to unscrew the filter unit in the front first. Then I'm able to take it out like this. Now I'm loosening up the clamp holder here. So next thing we're going to do is taking off the serpentine belt. I'm going to use a ratchet with a 15mm socket for doing that. This here is the belt tensioner pulley. I'm going to put that ratchet on there. Pull the ratchet towards the engine, just like that. Then you're able to remove the pulley up here from the alternator. That's the easiest way to do it. You can take off the serpentine off all of the pulley, and then you're able to just take it out. There it is. I was actually able to loosen up the clutch fan of the water pump pulley with the serpentine belt still attached to it. Just turning the big nut that you see here on top of the water pump pulley, turning it counterclockwise just like that. I was able to loosen it up. Now I can just hold this big nut with this adjustable wrench, and I'm turning the pulley clockwise, and that way the clutch fan is coming off. Unfortunately, I'm not able to take the fan clutch out. Not from the bottom, not from the top. So I'm just gonna leave it in there. Just be careful that the fan blades don't destroy your radiator from the inside. First I thought that the 4 screws that were in here in the pulley, that they were holding clutch fan, but they were not. So I already took them out. That's why I'm able to take off the water pump pulley now. I'm disconnecting the battery because I'm going to work on the alternator. I'm going to take it out. To be able to remove the fan shroud, I have to take off the washer fluid reservoir and also the engine coolant reservoir on this side. I'm going to take that off first by sliding it upwards. Maybe you can avoid taking off the lines and everything. I'm just going to leave it sitting there for now. Now I'm taking off the engine coolant reservoir. You just grab it here and then pull it upwards. I'm just going to put it to the side and leave it hanging. Now I'm taking off the fan shroud. Therefore I'm removing the 4 bolts that are holding the fan shroud to the radiator. There's 2 on each side. One sits right here, one down here. These are 10mm. Together with the clutch fan, I'm going to take out the fan shroud now. I'm this side it's a little tricky because the radiator with the hose adapter keeps you from pulling it just upwards. You have to move it over a little bit to get it out. There you go. I just got the new parts for the repair that we're going to do today. Got a new water pump here, a new thermostat, and also 2 new sensors. And also they sent me a bill. Well, yeah, I'm going to take care of that later. I'm going to remove this air compressor without taking off the pipes, because for that you would have to discharge it, and we don't want to do that. So I'm just taking off this few bolts here that are holding it. I think that should be about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bolts that we're going to remove now. Do that with a 13mm. Going to remove this bracket that's holding the air compressor. There's one bolt back here next to the upper radiator hose. Now you can remove this bracket here. This one here is the last one that's holding the AC compressor, and it's kind of hard to get it out, but if you use a 13mm wrench, it's easy to get there. You don't have to take it all the way out, you just have to loosen it up. Now the AC compressor is loose, but before we can flip it over, there's one more bracket to loosen up with this nut here that's holding the AC lines. I'm using a 15mm socket to loosen that one up. Now we have to disconnect the electric connectors. There's one on here and there's one back here. Before you can disconnect this one, you have to press in on this red thing. Then you can take it out by pressing on here. Now I'm picking up the AC compressor and basically just flipping it over. I don't want to scratch anything here, just going to put a little piece of cardboard underneath it. It's going to sit here during our whole repair, and then we're going to flip it back over and put it back in, not disconnecting all the lines. Next thing we're going to take out is the alternator. First we're going to remove this bolt up here. It's actually a bolt with windings on both sides, so you might want to use one of these longer sockets. We're just going to loosen up this bolt a little bit so that this bracket can get out of the way. As you see here, the engine oil dipstick is attached to the alternator, so we have to take out that bolt. The actual alternator is held by 2 bolts, one down here, one up here. We're going to take out the one on top first. The bolt down here actually has a nut on the other side, so we're going to use a 15mm wrench to hold against it, and then I'm going to use the socket to loosen it up. So now we're going to slide out the alternator to the top, and I'm flipping it over and just leaving it laying there. So now I can already see the old sensor, which is not really attached to it anymore, and good thing I ordered those 2 sensors too, because there's one for the computer. Actually, it just came off now. The other one is for the gauge. To take off this aluminum frame that's holding the AC compressor and the alternator, we have to loosen up and take out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bolts. They're all 15mm, and I'm loosening all 5 up a little bit before I start taking one out. If you take out the bolt first, you can take out the returning line, then you have easier access to the bolt back here. Now I'm going to pull out the returning line.
Sag doch mit dem Wasser das vorher.
Ich glaube, die sind alle gleich. We have to take the pulley off
in order to get to another bolt that's down here, and that should be the last one forever. Now I'm taking out this bracket here. Now before I take off the bolts that are holding the water pump, I'm going to try to disconnect the hoses. Now we're starting to remove these bolts. Pretty much looks like it that this is the first time that this water pump is being replaced. And this truck now has about 150,000 miles on it. These bolts are also a 15mm socket. This bolt here also is the actual draining bolt. Okay, I placed the bucket under it, so now I'm gonna let the rest of the fluid drain out. Not much left in there, but we don't want to spill that stuff. Now I'm gonna use this long metal piece. I'm gonna put it right here, and I'm just gonna move it a little bit like that. Then you can see how the water pump comes off. Now I can take off the actual pump. Since I'm going to put in a new thermostat anyways, I'm going to take out these two bolts here that holding this hose adapter here. I'm using a 13mm socket and an extension for my ratchet. There's the old one. I might not necessarily have to replace it this time, but I'm gonna do it since I'm still down here and it only costs like $5 or something. So this here is the returning line that comes from the cap, from the heater core. I'm gonna put this water hose on there and then flush the system backwards. There we go. Now the water is gonna be turned on. There you can see how the dirty water is gonna come out. Coming out everywhere. Looks like the flush is working pretty good since this water is really rusty, as you can see here. I'm gonna wait till everything is clean water coming out. So water is getting clearer now. Okay, I'm using the water hose. I'm taking it and sticking it in the top here, and I'm also putting it in here for a little to get actually all the rusty water out of there. All rusty sediments, you want to take them all out. I removed this hose clamp here. Now I'm going to take off the upper radiator hose. I'm going to leave the lower radiator hose attached to the radiator. Just moving it down like this so the old water can flush out. And now I'm taking the water hose and I'm going to put it in here. So we're just going to leave it flushing for a while until the water that's coming out of the bottom is all clean. So the water is coming out, it's clean now, so I'm going to turn off the water hose. Flushing out this hose a little bit. Actually, I'm going to put that in the... I didn't expect it to be that dirty, so I'm going to put it in the bucket. Okay, that should be enough. Now I'm going to disconnect these two wires here for the sensors. First sensor's out. Now I'm taking the other one. This is the rest of the sensor here. Here we have the two new sensors. They both look pretty similar, but there's one that has only one contact. The other one has two. So we're going to put that one here and the other one there. So before I'm putting in the new sensors, I'm using the steel wool to clean the surface a little bit, and then I'm going to apply some of the RTV sealant onto the sensor before I put it in. Just a little bit to be safe.
That's all I'm putting on there just to be safe. This one goes in here. Now I'm putting the plug back on. It has one little notch here so you know which way it goes around. Actually gonna try to use this long socket. Fits perfect over it. Okay, we have both sensors installed, as you can see here. And now we're gonna put in the thermostat with a new gasket. Okay, I'm gonna apply just a little bit of this silicone before I put on the new gasket, just in case the surface is not totally flat. Now I'm gonna put the actual gasket on there. This is the adapter that goes on there. It's the upper radiator hose. I'm gonna flatten the surface a little bit by using this copper wool. I'm gonna put some of that silicone on there. Putting these two screws in there to actually find the right spot. If you take this hose off of the adapter, make sure you put the adapter back in the right way. It has a little angle on it. And it says here where you put the front. Don't forget that you put the bolts into the aluminium down here and you don't want to over tighten them. So just tight and that's it. As you can see here, the Felpro gasket and the silicone make a nice seal. Okay, I used sandpaper to get all the old gasket off. Make sure the surface is nice and flat. I'm gonna rinse it all off. The new water pump, and I just noticed that it's not new, so it's remanufactured, because this surface is not really nice and flat. That's why I think I'm gonna use a good amount of silicone here. Now I'm gonna place the gasket on there. Now I'm gonna go and put another layer of silicone on there. I'm making sure that this is all clean and dry. I'm putting the 3 top screws in there so that the actual gasket doesn't move around when I put it in. I've put in all 7 bolts. There's a short one up here, short one here, short one here. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 long ones. We start tightening it up. Unfortunately, I can't get this one with the socket, so I have to use the wrench here. Now I'm making sure this hose sits on tight. Putting the clamp back on. Now I'm putting the radiator hose back on. And now I'm going to put the aluminum bracket back on. I have these 6 bolts here for the aluminum bracket. So this one, this one, this one, and this one are the short ones. There's one medium one that comes in here, and the longest one comes in here to the left. I'm going to replace this O-ring here from the return line. I'm going to put in a new one. Putting the return pipe back in. Before you do that, make sure you have tightened up this bolt right here. Now making sure all the bolts, they're all tight. Next thing we're going to do is putting the alternator back in place. The longer one goes on the bottom. And don't forget to put the nut in the back. Since we have easy access right now here, we can also put the
dipstick back on. Now we're putting the pulley that we took off the aluminum frame, putting that back in. Before we're flipping the AC compressor back into position, we have to put in this double-side threaded bolt. Now I'm flipping over the AC compressor. This bracket needs to go on top of this bolt here. Putting the nut on there. One of the screws still sits in here because you can't get it off without taking the lines off. We still have that there. We have 3 long ones left. Then we have the bracket, goes in the back. We have 1 long one on that side, 1 on the other side. We have the short one here. They're all 13 millimeter, and we're going to tighten them down now. I'm going to put the 2 plugs back on and the black one over here. And don't forget to put that safety switch back on. Now it's time to put the fan shroud back into place.
So before I attach the fan shroud back on the radiator, I'm going to slide this clutch fan in from this side right here. And I'm already connecting it loosely to the water pump pulley. It's easier if you hold the fan clutch in place and then spin the pulley as I'm doing it right now. Now we can attach the fan shroud to the radiator. This is the washer fluid reservoir. We're gonna put it in place now. There's 3 spots where it needs to slide, and down here there's 1, there's 2 up here. The engine coolant reservoir has 2 notches here. You basically just have to slide it in these 2 holes here. Belt routing sticker right in front of the radiator. I'm gonna start on the left side. Now I'm putting my ratchet with the 50 millimeter socket on the belt tensioner, pushing it to the inside, then putting the belt over the alternator and at the same time over the belt tensioner. Then I'm taking off my ratchet and that's it. Make sure you check all the pulleys, make sure that the belt sits on as it should. So now I'm going to tighten up the clutch fan onto the water pump pulley here. I'm going to use 2 5 millimeter bolts and I'm going to put them into the holes of the pulley. I'm not putting them all the way in, just a little bit. Here you can see the 2 bolts sticking out. Now I'm using this long screwdriver and putting it in between those 2 bolts that I just put in there. That way I'm holding the pulley with the screwdriver, and now I'm using this wrench to turn the nut. That's it. This way you can make sure it's nice and tight even though you don't have the right tools. This is also a way for getting it loose. That's it. The clutch fan is all tightened up. Now I can take off the tools. And that's it for the repair today. I thank you very much for watching. Please feel free to subscribe to my channel or click like if you want to. You can also find me on Google Plus or Facebook, so feel free to write me a message or any comment. I appreciate every comment and every subscription. So this is Ceramic85 signing out.